Before we begin, I need to share something with you. This story did not happen. The encounter I am about to describe, the words I will put in these men's mouths, the specific details of place and time, all of it comes from imagination rather than history. Bruce Lee died in 1973, when Jean-Claude Van Damme was only 13 years old, a teenager in Brussels who had not yet become the muscles from Brussels, who had not yet thrown a single kick in a Hollywood film. They never met. History did not give us that gift. But here is what I believe with absolute certainty. If they had met, if some twist of fate had brought these two extraordinary men together when both were at the peak of their powers, something profound would have happened. Something that would have changed both of their lives. And so this story is not journalism. It is not biography. It is a dream, a vision of what should have been, a tribute to two men who dedicated their lives to the art of movement and the pursuit of physical perfection. I'm asking you to do something difficult. I'm asking you to let go of the need for verified facts, to release your grip on documented reality, to step with me into a space where legend meets legend and truth emerges not from what happened, but from what these encounters reveal about who these men truly were. Can you do that? Can you trust me enough to take this journey together? Then close your eyes for just a moment. Take a breath. And come with me to Hong Kong, 1972, where a young Belgian fighter with the fastest legs in Europe is about to learn the most painful and important lesson of his life. The heat hit Jean-Claude Van Damme like a wall the moment he stepped off the plane. Hong Kong in summer was not merely hot. It was aggressive, the humidity wrapping around his body like a wet blanket that would not let go. He was 22 years old, already a champion in European kickboxing circuits, already convinced that he was destined for greatness far beyond the small arenas of Belgium and France. He had come to Hong Kong for one reason: to meet the man everyone said was the greatest martial artist alive, and to prove that the title belonged to someone else. To him. I want you to understand something about Jean-Claude Van Damme at 22. He was not merely confident. Confidence is too small a word. He existed in a state of absolute certainty about his own abilities that bordered on delusion. He had won every tournament he had entered since the age of 16. His kicks were legendary, spinning heel kicks and roundhouses that came so fast opponents often did not see them until they were waking up on the canvas. He had been told by every trainer, every opponent, every admirer that his legs were the most dangerous weapons in European martial arts. And he had believed them. He had believed them so completely that the belief had curdled into something else: arrogance, the unshakable conviction that no one on earth could match what he could do. He had seen Bruce Lee's films, of course. Everyone in martial arts had seen Bruce Lee's films. But Van Damme had watched them with the critical eye of a competitor rather than the wonder of a fan. He had noted the camera tricks, the editing that made movements seem faster than they were, the choreography that substituted for real combat. He had concluded that Bruce Lee was a movie star who knew some martial arts, not a martial artist who happened to make movies. A performer, an entertainer, a small man who had convinced the world he was dangerous through the magic of cinema. Van Damme had come to Hong Kong to expose this illusion, to challenge Bruce Lee to a real confrontation, without cameras or choreography, and to demonstrate once and for all that speed and power belonged to the young Belgian with the lethal legs, not to a small Chinese actor who had never competed in a real tournament. This is what arrogance does. It blinds us to our own ignorance. It makes us certain of things we have never tested. It transforms confidence into a prison where we cannot learn because we already believe we know everything. Have you ever been that certain about something? So sure of yourself that the possibility of being wrong never even entered your mind? Think about how that felt. The comfort of absolute certainty. And then think about what happened when reality finally broke through. Hold that feeling, because you are about to watch it happen to Jean-Claude Van Damme. The address he had been given led to a training compound in the hills above Hong Kong, far from the neon chaos of Kowloon and the tourist districts. The taxi driver had looked at him strangely when he gave the destination, had asked twice if he was sure, had finally shrugged and driven in silence up winding roads that seemed to climb forever. The compound itself was modest, a main building that might have been a house or a school, surrounded by training areas open to the sky. Wooden dummies stood in rows like silent soldiers. Heavy bags hung from frames, swaying slightly in the humid breeze. The smell of sweat and leather and something else, something Van Damme could not identify, but that made his instincts prickle with warning. A young Chinese man met him at the gate. "You are the Belgian," he said in accented English. It was not a question. Van Damme drew himself up to his full height, using every inch of his 5 feet 10 inches, his muscular frame straining against his tight T-shirt. "I am Jean-Claude Van Damme, European kickboxing champion. I have come to meet Bruce Lee." The young man's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or pity. "Sifu is expecting you. Follow me." They walked through the compound, past students practicing forms and techniques Van Damme did not recognize. He noted their movements with professional assessment, looking for weaknesses, for openings, for the signs of incomplete training that would confirm his beliefs about this place. He found none. These students moved with a precision and economy that unsettled him slightly, though he would never have admitted it. The young man led him to a covered training area at the back of the compound. It was cooler here, shaded from the brutal sun, with mats covering the floor and mirrors lining one wall. And, standing in the center of the space, alone, was a small man in simple black clothing. Bruce Lee. Van Damme's first thought was, he is even smaller than he looks in the films. It was true. Bruce Lee stood perhaps 5 feet 7 inches tall and could not have weighed more than 135 pounds. His arms were lean, almost thin. His frame was compact, efficient, entirely without the bulging muscles that Van Damme associated with power and strength. Standing next to the Belgian champion, he would have looked almost fragile. But his eyes, those eyes swept across Van Damme with an intensity that made the young fighter's breath catch. There was no warmth in that gaze, no welcome. There was assessment, calculation, the look of a predator determining exactly how dangerous its prey might be. And then, having completed his assessment in the space of a heartbeat, Bruce Lee smiled. "So," he said, and his voice was softer than Van Damme had expected, almost gentle. "You are the young man who has been telling everyone in Hong Kong that I am a fraud." Van Damme felt his face flush. He had not expected his words to travel so quickly, had not anticipated that his boasts in hotel bars and training gyms would reach their target before he did. But he was not a man who backed down from his statements. "I said what I believe," Van Damme replied, his French accent thick with defiance. "You're a movie star. You make entertainment for people who do not understand real fighting. I'm a real fighter. I have won championships. I have defeated opponents in actual combat, not choreographed performances." He stepped forward, closing the distance between them, using his height advantage to loom over the smaller man. It was a tactic that had intimidated countless opponents, the physical assertion of dominance before any techniques were thrown. "I came here to challenge you," Van Damme continued. "A real fight. No cameras, no tricks. Just you and me, and we will see who is the fraud." The training area had gone silent. Students who had been practicing nearby had stopped to watch. The young man who had escorted Van Damme stood by the entrance, his face carefully blank. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting to see how the master would respond to this public challenge. Bruce Lee did not step back, did not acknowledge the height difference or the muscular frame looming over him. He simply stood there, relaxed, centered, as if the young Belgian were a minor inconvenience rather than a legitimate threat. "You have fast legs," Bruce said, and his tone was conversational, almost friendly. "I have heard about your kicks. They say you're the fastest in Europe, perhaps the fastest in the world." Van Damme felt a surge of satisfaction. Even here, even facing the man he had come to dethrone, his reputation had preceded him. "My legs are the fastest anywhere," he confirmed. "No one has ever blocked my spinning heel kick. No one has even seen it coming. When I fight you, you will understand what real speed looks like." Bruce nodded slowly, as if seriously considering these claims. "Speed is important," he agreed. "But I wonder, have you ever considered what speed actually means? What is for? What separates true speed from mere quickness?" Van Damme frowned. "Speed is speed. how fast you can move, how quickly you can strike. It is not complicated. Bruce's smile widened slightly. That is what I thought you would say. That is what everyone says until they learn otherwise. He gestured to the open space around them. Would you like to learn? Right now? A simple demonstration that will show you what speed really means. The Belgian's eyes narrowed. A demonstration or a fight? Let us start with a demonstration. If you're not satisfied afterward, we could discuss a fight. Bruce took a step back, creating space between them. I will stand here. You will try to kick me. Any kick you choose, as fast as you can throw it. I will not move my feet from this position. I will only use my hands. If you succeed in kicking me even once, I will acknowledge that your speed is everything you claim it to be. Van Damme laughed. The sound was sharp, mocking, full of the contempt he felt for this small man and his theatrical proposal. You will use only your hands? Against my kicks? Little man, my kicks have knocked out fighters twice your size. My legs are longer than your entire body. You will not be able to reach me, let alone stop me. He laughed again, louder this time, playing to the audience of students who watched in silence. He wanted them to see this. He wanted them to watch their master humiliated by a real fighter, a real champion, a man whose abilities were proven in actual combat rather than manufactured on film sets. This will be easy, Van Damme said, still laughing. This will be the easiest demonstration of my career. Bruce Lee did not respond to the mockery. His expression remained calm, almost serene, as if the Belgian's contempt were a breeze too gentle to notice. Whenever you are ready, he said simply. I want you to pause here. I want you to feel this moment fully. A young man, drunk on his own success, mocking a legend to his face, laughing at his size, dismissing his abilities, absolutely certain that the next few seconds will prove everything he believes about himself. This is the moment before the fall. The instant before reality shatters illusion. The last breath of arrogance before humility comes crashing in. Have you ever witnessed such a moment? Have you ever watched someone's certainty dissolve in real time? It is painful to observe. It is also sometimes necessary. Van Damme settled into his fighting stance. His weight shifted to his back leg, loading the spring that would power his signature kick. He focused on Bruce Lee's chest, a target he could not possibly miss from this distance. He took a breath, and then he unleashed the kick that had won him championships. His spinning heel kick was a thing of beauty. His body rotated with explosive power, his rear leg whipping around in an arc that should have been too fast to see, let alone defend against. He had thrown this kick thousands of times. He had knocked out dozens of opponents with it. It was perfect as human movement could be. It hit nothing but air. Van Damme completed his rotation and stumbled slightly. His leg extended into empty space where Bruce Lee should have been, but somehow was not. The smaller man had moved, but the Belgian's eyes had not been able to track the movement. One moment Bruce was in the path of the kick. The next moment he was 6 inches to the left, perfectly balanced, completely untouched. And before Van Damme could reset, before he could even process what had happened, something touched his throat. Not a strike, not a punch, just a touch, light as a whisper. Bruce Lee's index finger resting against his windpipe, communicating a simple truth. I could have crushed this. I chose not to. The laughter died in Van Damme's throat. The mockery evaporated from his eyes. What replaced it was something he had not felt in years, had perhaps never truly felt in his entire competitive career. Fear. That was one kick, Bruce said calmly, withdrawing his finger. Would you like to try another? If this moment is landing for you, if you're feeling the shock that Jean-Claude Van Damme fell standing there with his world reorganizing itself around new information, then take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Because what happens next shattered everything. Van Damme tried again, and again, and again. He threw every kick in his arsenal. The spinning heel kick that had never failed him. The roundhouse that had cracked ribs. The side kick that had bent steel. The jumping back kick that was supposed to be impossible to anticipate. He threw them fast, and then faster, high, and then low, in combinations that no one had ever survived. None of them landed. Bruce Lee moved like something from a dream. He did not dodge in any conventional sense. He did not block or parry or deflect. He simply was not where the kicks were, as if he existed slightly outside of normal time, as if he could see where Van Damme's legs would be before the Belgian himself had decided to put them there. And each time a kick missed, that gentle touch would appear somewhere on Van Damme's body. Throat, temple, solar plexus, groin. Reminders, lessons, proof that while the young champion was failing to create offense, Bruce could have been destroying him piece by piece. 7 seconds. It took 7 seconds for Jean-Claude Van Damme's entire identity to collapse. He stopped. His chest was heaving, but not from exertion. 7 seconds of kicking was nothing for a conditioned athlete like himself. No, this breathlessness came from somewhere deeper, from a psychological devastation of complete helplessness, from the total annihilation of everything he had believed about himself and his abilities. The training area was absolutely silent. The students had watched without breathing. What they had witnessed was beyond their understanding, beyond the laws of combat as they knew them. The fastest kicker in Europe had been made to look like a beginner, throwing his first clumsy strikes. Van Damme stood frozen, his arms hanging at his sides, his legendary legs suddenly feeling like useless appendages. The arrogance was gone. The mockery was gone. What remained was a young man who had just discovered that everything he thought he knew was wrong. Ow! The word came out as a whisper. How is that possible? My kicks are faster than anyone's. No one has ever avoided them. No one. Bruce Lee relaxed from his ready position. The predator was gone. What remained was something gentler. A teacher looking at a student who had finally become ready to learn. Sit with me, Bruce said. I will explain. They sat on the matted floor, facing each other. The students quietly returned to their training, understanding that what was about to happen was private, a transmission between master and student that required space. You asked how? Bruce began. The answer is not what you expect. I am not faster than your kicks. Your legs move more quickly than my hands. If we measured pure velocity, you would win. You are right about that. Von Damme frowned. Then how did you avoid every kick? How did you touch me every time? Because speed is not what you think it is. Bruce leaned forward, his intensity increasing. You believe speed is about how fast your body moves, how quickly you can send your leg from one position to another. This is what everyone believes. This is what all your trainers have taught you. And this is why you will never achieve true speed. He tapped his own temple. True speed is not in the body. True speed is in the mind. When you decided to throw your spinning heel kick, the decision happened in your brain before your body received the command. There was a moment, less than a heartbeat, when your intention became visible. Your eyes focused on your target. Your shoulders began to rotate. Your weight shifted to your back leg. These signals are tiny, invisible to most observers, but they are there. And if you learn to read them, you can know what attack is coming before it begins. Van Damme listened with the desperate attention of a drowning man being thrown a rope. His entire framework for understanding combat was being dismantled and rebuilt in real time. You read my intentions, he said slowly. You saw what I was going to do before I did it. Exactly. I do not react to your kick. By the time your kick is in the air, it is too late to react. The human body cannot move fast enough. Instead, I see your decision. I see the thought before it becomes action. And I am already moving before you begin. Bruce paused, letting the concept settle. This is why I told you that your speed is merely quickness. You can move your legs very fast, but your mind is slow. Your intentions are broadcast to anyone who knows how to look. You are a fast runner who announces his direction before every step. The words should have stung. They should have reignited Van Damme's defensiveness, his arrogance, his need to prove himself superior. But something had broken inside him. The protective shell of certainty that had surrounded his ego had cracked open, and for the first time in years, he was able to hear criticism without immediately rejecting it. Can this be learned? He asked, and his voice held none of the boastful confidence from before. Can someone like me learn to see the way you see? Bruce studied him for a long moment. What he saw was a young man in crisis, a fighter whose identity had been built on a foundation that had just been revealed as sand. This was a dangerous moment. Many people, when their illusions were shattered, responded with anger or denial or retreat. They rebuilt their walls higher and stronger, protecting themselves from ever having to feel this vulnerability again. But some people responded differently. Some people used the destruction of their old selves as an opportunity to build something new, something better, something true. "What is your name?" Bruce asked. "Your real name, not your fighting name." Jean-Claude. Jean-Claude van Varenberg. Jean-Claude. Bruce spoke the name carefully, giving it weight. "I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly. Not the answer you think I want to hear. Not the answer that protects your pride. The truth." Van Damme nodded, bracing himself. "When you came here today, why did you really come? Not the reason you told yourself. Not the challenge you announced to everyone. The real reason. The one you have not admitted even to yourself." The question cut through every defense Van Damme had built. He sat in silence for a long moment, feeling something shift inside him. The honest answer was not flattering. The honest answer revealed things about himself that he had been running from for years. "I was afraid," he finally said, and the admission felt like removing a splinter that had been festering under his skin. "I had heard about you. Everyone talks about you. They say you are the greatest. They say no one can touch you. And I was afraid that it was true. I was afraid that everything I had achieved meant nothing. That I was not special. That I was just another fighter who would be forgotten." He looked up, meeting Bruce's eyes. "I came here to prove you were a fraud because I was terrified that you were not. I mocked your size because I needed to believe that size was what mattered, that my body was my advantage. If you were really as good as they said, then everything I believed about myself was a lie." Bruce nodded slowly. There was no judgment in his expression, only understanding. "That is the most honest thing you have said since you arrived. And that honesty is why I'm going to help you." He stood and extended his hand to Van Damme, pulling the young fighter to his feet. The man who walked into this compound was arrogant, closed, certain of things he had never tested. That man could not learn anything from me. But the man standing here now, the one who has admitted his fear and his uncertainty, that man can learn everything. Bruce smiled, and for the first time there was warmth in it. "Would you like to begin?" What followed was unlike any training Jean-Claude Van Damme had ever experienced. For the next 6 hours, Bruce Lee systematically dismantled everything the young Belgian thought he knew about martial arts and rebuilt it from the foundation. He began with perception exercises. Simple drills where Van Damme had to identify which direction Bruce would move before he moved, learning to read the microscopic signals that preceded all motion. At first, Van Damme was wrong almost every time. His eyes were trained to watch for big movements, for obvious tells, for the things that happened after decisions were made rather than before. But slowly, gradually, something began to shift. He started to notice details he had never seen before. The way Bruce's weight would settle almost imperceptibly before step. The way his eyes would flick toward a target a fraction of a second before his body followed. The way his breathing would change when he was about to attack versus when he was waiting. "You are learning to see," Bruce told him as the afternoon wore on. "Not just to look, but to see. These are different things. Most people look at the world and see only what they expect to see. True perception means seeing what is actually there, even when it surprises you." He taught Van Damme about economy of motion, about the wasted energy in his kicks that made them powerful but also slow and predictable. He showed him how a smaller movement, properly timed, could be more effective than a large one because it could not be anticipated as easily. "Your spinning heel kick is beautiful," Bruce said during one demonstration. "Is powerful and impressive, and it makes audiences gasp. But it takes nearly a full second to complete. In that second, I can hit you 7 times. Sometimes beauty must be sacrificed for effectiveness." This was hard for Van Damme to hear. His kicks were his identity. They were what made him special, what separated him from every other fighter. The idea of abandoning them, or even modifying them, felt like being asked to cut off a limb. "I'm not telling you to stop kicking," Bruce clarified, reading the resistance in his student's posture. "I'm telling you to understand what your kicks are for. They are not for every situation. They are tools, and a master craftsman knows which tool to use when." Sometimes the spinning heel kick is perfect. Sometimes a simple front kick that takes 1/10 of the time is better. Wisdom is knowing the difference. If you're finding value in these lessons, if you're seeing how they apply not just to fighting, but to everything in life, then please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Because the transformation we are witnessing is not just about martial arts. It is about becoming who we are meant to be. As evening approached and the light in the training compound turned golden, Bruce and Van Damme sat together on a bench overlooking the city below. The arrogant young champion who had arrived that morning was gone. In his place was someone humbler, quieter, more thoughtful. Someone who had experienced the destruction of his illusions and had chosen to see it as a gift rather than a defeat. "I have a question," Van Damme said. "Why did you agree to see me? You knew what I had been saying about you. You knew I came here to challenge you, to try to humiliate you. Why not just refuse? Why give your time to someone who disrespected you?" Bruce was quiet for a moment, watching the lights of Hong Kong begin to flicker on as darkness approached. "Because I was you," he said finally. "When I was your age, I was the same. Arrogant, certain, closed to anything that threatened my sense of my own superiority. I challenged masters and mocked those who tried to teach me. I believed that my abilities made me special, made me better than others." He turned to look at Van Damme directly. "I was wrong, and I was fortunate that someone took the time to show me how wrong I was, even though I did not deserve their patience. They gave me a gift that transformed my life. Today, I pass that gift to you." Van Damme felt emotion welling up in his chest, something he had not allowed himself to feel in years. The vulnerability of genuine gratitude. "Thank you," he said, and the words felt inadequate but necessary. "Thank you for not turning me away. Thank you for teaching me instead of just defeating me. Thank you for showing me who I could become instead of just punishing me for who I was." Bruce smiled. "The teacher arrives when the student is ready. You were not ready this morning, but something in you is searching for this lesson, even when your conscious mind was running from it. That is why you came to Hong Kong, not to challenge me, to find yourself." He reached into his pocket and withdrew something small. In the fading light, Van Damme could see it was a medallion, worn smooth with handling, inscribed with characters he could not read. "This was given to me by my teacher," Bruce said. "He told me that it carried the most important truth in martial arts. In life, the characters say, the usefulness of the cup is in its emptiness." He pressed the medallion into Van Damme's palm. "Your cup was full when you arrived, full of pride and certainty and beliefs that blocked you from learning anything new. Today, your cup was emptied. It was painful. It was humiliating, but it was necessary, because now you can be filled with something true." Van Damme looked at the medallion, feeling its weight in his hand. Such a small object to carry such a large truth. "I cannot take this. It is yours. It is part of your story. Stories are not possessions to be hoarded. They are gifts to be passed on. This medallion has served its purpose with me. Now it will serve its purpose with you. And someday, when you meet a young person who is as arrogant and closed as you were today, you will pass it on to them." They stood together as the last light faded. The city below was a galaxy of lights now, millions of people living their lives, unaware of what had happened in this compound above them. "What will you do now?" Bruce asked. "Where will you go from here?" Van Damme considered the question carefully. 24 hours ago, he would have had an instant answer. Go back to Europe, win more tournaments, prove his superiority to anyone who doubted him. But that path felt hollow now, a treadmill of external validation that would never satisfy the hunger inside him. "I do not know," he admitted. "Everything I thought I wanted feels different now. Smaller, less important. That is good. Uncertainty is the beginning of wisdom. The man who knows exactly what he wants has stopped growing. The man who is searching is still alive." Bruce extended his hand, and Van Damme shook it. The grip was firm, warm, full of something that felt like brotherhood. "Go home," Bruce said. "Train differently. See differently. And when you are ready, come back. I will teach you more. Not because you have earned it yet, but because I see what you could become. And what you could become is magnificent." Van Damme left the compound that night a different man than the one who had arrived. He walked down the winding road toward the city, the medallion clutched in his hand, the words of his new teacher echoing in his mind. The usefulness of the cup is in its emptiness. He had come to Hong Kong to prove he was the greatest. He was leaving knowing he was just beginning. The years that followed were not easy. Van Damme returned to Belgium and tried to apply what he had learned, but it was slow going. The habits of a lifetime did not change overnight. The arrogance that Bruce had cracked open kept trying to seal itself back up, kept whispering that the lessons of that day had been a fluke, that his old way was still best. But every time that voice grew loud, Van Damme would take out the medallion and remember. He would remember standing helplessly while a smaller man made him look like a beginner. He would remember the moment his mockery died in his throat. He would remember the gift he had been given by someone who had every right to refuse him. And he would empty his cup again. He never saw Bruce Lee again. The news of Bruce's death in 1973 reached him in Brussels, and he wept for hours, not just for the loss of a legend, but for the conversations they would never have, the lessons he would never learn, the friendship that had been cut short before it could fully bloom. But the medallion remained, and the teachings remained. And slowly, over years of dedicated practice, Jean-Claude Van Damme became something different than what he would have been. Not just a fighter with fast legs, but a martial artist who understood that true speed was in the mind. Not just a competitor seeking trophies, but a seeker searching for mastery. Not just an arrogant young man demanding the world's respect, but a humble student who knew how much he still had to learn. When he finally achieved fame, when his kicks became legendary in Hollywood films, when audiences around the world gasped at his physical abilities, Van Damme knew something they did not. He knew that everything he had achieved had begun on a day when a small man in Hong Kong had shown him that everything he believed was wrong. He knew that his greatest victory was not any tournament or film, but the moment he had been willing to let his old self die so that a new self could be born. In interviews, when asked about his influences, Van Damme would sometimes mention Bruce Lee, but he never told the full story. The mockery, the humiliation, the complete destruction of his arrogance. These were private memories, too personal to share with reporters seeking entertainment rather than truth. Only in quiet moments, when the cameras were off and the fame had faded into silence, would he take out the medallion and remember. The usefulness of the cup is in its emptiness. The lesson that had saved him. The gift that had transformed him. And sometimes, when he met young fighters who reminded him of himself at 22, arrogant and closed and certain of things they had never tested, he would tell them a story. A story about a young man who came to Hong Kong to prove he was the greatest and left knowing he was just beginning. The final scene of this story takes place many years later in a small dojo in Los Angeles. Jean-Claude Van Damme, now older, his body carrying the wear of decades of training and filming, stands before a young fighter who has just arrived seeking his guidance. The young man is talented. That much is obvious. His kicks are fast, his technique is sound, his body is a weapon honed through years of practice. But there is something else there too. Something Van Damme recognizes immediately. Arrogance. The certainty that he already knows everything he needs to know. The closed mind that cannot receive new information because it is already full. Van Damme schmoyelsch. He has been waiting for this moment for a long time. You think you are fast, he says to the young fighter. You think your kicks are unstoppable. You have come here to show me what you can do, perhaps to prove that you are better than the old man everyone used to admire. The young fighter's expression flickers. He had not expected to be read so accurately. Let me tell you a story, Van Damme continues. A story about a young man very much like you, who traveled to Hong Kong many years ago to challenge the greatest martial artist alive. This young man was arrogant. He mocked his opponent's size. He was absolutely certain that he would win. He reaches into his pocket and withdraws a medallion, worn smooth with decades of handling. The characters inscribed on it are barely visible now, but their meaning is burned into his memory. This young man learned something that day, something that changed everything. He learned that the usefulness of the cup is in its emptiness. He learned that his certainty was a prison, that his arrogance was a blindfold, that everything he thought he knew was blocking him from learning what he needed to know. He presses the medallion into the young fighter's palm. I have carried this for 40 years, waiting for the right moment to pass it on. Today is that moment. You are that person. The young fighter looks at the medallion, confused but somehow moved. I do not understand. Van Damme smiles, and in his smile is the warmth that Bruce Lee showed him all those years ago. The warmth of a teacher recognizing a student who is about to begin a journey. You will, he says. By the end of today, you will. And then he settles into his stance, his old body still carrying the lessons of a lifetime, ready to give a young person the same gift that was given to him. The destruction of arrogance, the beginning of wisdom, the emptying of the cup. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming with me on this journey through a meeting that never happened, but contains truths that are eternal. If this story has touched you, please subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be too certain of their own abilities. Someone whose cup might need to be emptied. Because we are all that young man sometimes. We all carry arrogance that blinds us. We all need someone to show us, gently or not so gently, that what we think we know is preventing us from learning what we need to know. Empty your cup, let go of certainty, and become who you are meant to be.